Yo, so guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to what if Richter 10 scale earthquake hit. And I mean, I don't think that's even on the Richter scale, right? Well, let's just see the Richter. I feel like the highest on the Richter scale was 8. Highest Richter scale earthquake recorded. Oh, I mean 9.2 in 1964. Oh, well there we go. No, earthquakes of magnitude 10 or larger cannot happen. The magnitude of an earthquake is related to the length of the fault on which it occurs. Okay, so it's probably not likely, but let's just say it can happen. I guess this is supposed to be like a sort of fantasy mixed with somewhat realistic. I don't know, we're just going to see. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this one. Hopefully go on to enjoy this reaction. Shout out to my Instagram, my Twitter, links in the description for those interested. Same for my Patreon, links all there for those interested. I'm doing a Patreon reaction after this, probably BuzzFeed Unsolved. So if you're interested in that, links are all there. Again, I would post BuzzFeed Unsolved on my YouTube, but sadly they get blocked, which is actually gutting because I remember the first one I reacted to, it was able to come onto YouTube, but yeah, since then it just doesn't seem to like it. Just copyright, bang, just blocks instantly. But yeah, links all there for those who care for it. But let's jump into this one. Hopefully you're going to enjoy. Suggest some more videos you want to see in future. And yeah,
the following is a fictionalized scenario, though
there we go.
Many scientists agree that it's not only possible, but inevitable, and most expected to happen very soon. It's a quiet Valentine's Day morning in 2021. For a month and a half, the world's been grateful that the dreadfulness of 2020 is finally over. But it seems disaster has one last gasp. 100 miles off the North American northwest coast, 2 continental plates are stuck in a million-year-old shove.
Actually, when I say that, 2021, I mean, in the UK, we've had a lot of lockdown. Today's officially the day where all restrictions are over in the UK, the 19th of July. So for this whole year, we've pretty much had restrictions here and there. We've had lockdowns for months, I think for like 4 months at one point. From Christmas to a certain point, and then there was a little release, and then there was another lockdown. Fuck, this year's not been much better. I mean, maybe like a bit better, but nah. To be honest, 2021 has not been much better than 2020. And if it has by like a tiny amount.
Shoving match. The Juan de Fuca Oceanic Plate and the North American Continental Plate have been drifting in opposite directions for much longer than humanity's been around, with the Juan de Fuca Plate being forced under the massive North American Plate. The process hasn't been smooth though, and the 2 plates have been stuck in place for a very long time. The massive forces acting on the Cascadia subduction zone, creating a
So it's going to lead to a chaotic
noticeable bulge in the crust of the Earth. At 8:03 a.m., 80 miles of the Juan de Fuca Plate finally buckle from the incredible strain, slipping under the North American Plate. In an instant, the bulge flattens, and an energy equivalent to the total output of the entire planet in 1 year is released. Mere milliseconds after the collapse.
Jeez, what the f... The energy equal to a year on the output of the output... I know what he's saying, but in this small event, there's more energy, there's the same amount of energy as there would be in a year as like the output that Earth has or something.
The entire planet in 1 year is released. Mere milliseconds after the collapse, the entire Pacific Northwest coast from British Columbia to Northern California begins to shake. The foreshock alone measures a whopping magnitude 6, rattling commuters just now driving to work all across the Pacific coast of North America. Even as far south as Los Angeles, homes are rattled, pictures falling off the walls, but the nightmare has only just begun. The shaking very quickly intensifies dramatically, and suddenly buildings and bridges are swaying several feet in the air, pushing their earthquake tolerances to the absolute limit. Smart government regulation has mandated for decades that American and Canadian high-rise buildings and bridges both are built to withstand large quakes, and despite their appearance, even the largest skyscrapers are surprisingly resistant. But no skyscraper and no city on Earth has ever faced the wrath of a magnitude 10 earthquake. The shaking is so severe that the tops of the skyscrapers are now swaying over 3 feet in the opposite direction of their bases, causing a 6-foot offset. This is too much for many of even the most modern and earthquake-proof buildings, and internal support columns begin to crack under the incredible strain. Inside of the high-rise offices and apartment buildings, people are thrown across rooms, then violently tossed back in the opposite direction from the awesome force of the mighty shaking. Water pipes feeding fire suppression systems burst, flooding the inside of the buildings. After the first 30 seconds, some of the interior walls begin to crumble, exposing dangerous live wires to the water streaming out of burst pipes. Thousands are electrocuted. Incredible as it seems, there are still 4.5 minutes left of shaking to go. Plate glass windows built to resist hurricane-force winds and tremendous impacts shatter from the strain of twisting and swaying in their frames as the building dances back and forth around them. People are hurled out of now open windows to the streets below. Those running for their lives on city streets are showered with guillotine blaze-sized chunks of glass and falling people alike. On bridges across the American Northwest,
like
cars are violently thrown to and fro. Panicking drivers either try to speed off the wildly swaying bridges or slam their brakes in terror. This causes a massive traffic jam, trapping motorists on the dangerously swaying bridges. Many flee their vehicles on foot, crawling over stuck vehicles and doing their best not to be thrown off the bridge by violent swaying. But after 45 seconds of violent shaking, it's finally too much. The structural tolerances of bridges all across Cascadia are exceeded, and one by one bridges collapse, plunging thousands to their deaths. Rail lines are severed all across the region, causing trains to derail and plow into surrounding buildings. Passengers and cargo are spilled all over cities.
They're really going into this prediction, right? Jeez. All the little details.
And the wilderness, causing many more deaths, along with a massive environmental disaster as millions of tons of industrial chemicals and wastes are spilled across some of the most pristine forests in North America. Massive fires erupt as oil and gas being shipped by rail freight is spilled in train disaster after disaster. Now, the Pacific Northwest is not only shaking, it's burning. Back in the cities, people flee the violently swaying buildings, but they find no safety on the streets. Falling glass and masonry slices and crushes people running for their lives, and as gas mains are severed, massive explosions rock cities in the affected area. Raw sewage floods city streets. Sinkholes begin to emerge and swallow people by the dozens. At 1.5 minutes of shaking, all but the sturdiest skyscrapers begin to crumble. There are still 3.5 minutes left. Powerful waves of energy deep beneath the earth combine with the normal shaking caused by the massive earthquake to create a unique scenario in the ground above it. The soil itself seems to liquefy, shaken so violently that it becomes almost like quicksand. While most skyscrapers have survived up to...
Is that actually possible? It just turns into like sort of, not liquid, but again, it just, you sink into it kind of thing? Or is that just an idea that they've just brought up? Because if that's true, what the hell?
This is the final nail in the coffin. Buildings weighing millions of tons suddenly sink several feet into the ground, losing their firm foundations and now shaking uncontrollably. The center support columns, vital to keeping skyscrapers aloft, snap like toothpicks. And almost as if caught in a controlled demolition, skyscraper after skyscraper seems to collapse inward. Masonry the size of boulders rains down across city blocks, burying anybody caught in the open. Those stuck inside the collapsing buildings have almost no chance of survival, though a few of those who took shelter in basements and parking garages become entombed by the falling debris. Incredibly, the earth continues to shake at such violent magnitude for another 3 minutes. The full 5 minutes of constant shaking is enough to bring down nearly every structure over 4 stories all across the North American wilderness. The cities of Seattle, Vancouver, Portland, Spokane, Tacoma, and Boise, along with a few others, are almost all completely leveled. It's devastation on a scale humanity has not seen since the end of the Second World War. Entire cities, once full of over 500,000 people, have nearly disappeared in a haze of dust and smoke. Iconic landmarks such as Seattle's Space Needle are gone, brought low by the worst earthquake humanity has ever endured. Massive fires have broken out, and from space it appears as if almost the entire region of Cascadia is in flames. However, fire will very soon be the least of the survivors' concerns. Less than a minute after the shaking finally stops, it finally arrives.
The tsunamis. Oh, bro! If this ever was gonna happen, man. If this ever did happen again, I think it's not likely. There's probably no chance of it. But that small percentage, the small percentage that it does happen, because I'm sure in the 5 billion years the Earth's been, I'm sure there's been earthquakes to this degree. Like there has to have been. I'm sure of it. Again, maybe scientifically it's just not possible. But I'm thinking to myself, surely it's happened, so it can happen again. And wrong place, wrong time. Maybe when humans are here, it can happen. And God, damn if it does.
Most devastating tsunami in recorded history. The incoming tsunami is so massive that entire ports all along the coast are emptied of water just before its arrival. Many recognize this portent of impending doom from videos of the infamous tsunamis in Southeast Asia and Japan and begin to flee for their lives. Others stare dumbfounded as marine life flops and gasps for breath, where just moments ago they were swimming in water up to 30 feet deep. The fish don't have to wait long for the water to return. Racing at 1,000 miles per hour, the tsunami towers 200 feet in the air, or almost 80 feet higher than the 2011 Japanese tsunami that devastated the country. Survivors of the violent shaking scramble to get to rooftops all across the North American coast, but there are few buildings tall enough to save them. The incoming wave measures nearly 14 stories tall, and as it finally breaks on land, it washes right over the coastal infrastructure, crushing thousands under the pounding waves. The real devastation, however, comes not from the height of the tsunami wave, but the incredible power behind it. Entire buildings are ripped from their foundations and carried along with the wave as the waters push an incredible half-mile inland in most places. Anything still standing in coastal cities is now under assault by a battering ram of trillions of tons of water and debris, and for most surviving buildings, it's too much. Skyscrapers that miraculously survived the shaking are brought low by the battering ram effect of the crushing waves. The wave takes almost half a day to begin to wash back out to sea, by which time a tsunami wave sent toward Asia finally makes landfall in Japan and China's coast. Hawaii has long since been inundated, though thanks to the warning, actual fatalities are almost zero. Devastation reminiscent of the 2011 Japanese tsunami wreaks havoc as far south as Vietnam. Back in North America, rescue efforts by the U.S. military begin almost immediately after the start of the disaster, but there are few to save. By the time the waters finally recede, any survivors of the earthquake who had been taking refuge in basements or car garages have been drowned. Others further inland and ahead of the waves may have as little as days left to live before the breathable air runs out. With thousands of collapsed buildings to search in each affected city and dozens of major population centers affected, there's simply not enough rescue personnel in the US and Canada to save most of those trapped. Sea levels return to their normal state after a day, but the fires take 2 weeks to put out. So much smoke has been created by the burning cities that smog spreads as far east as Detroit. When the smoke finally clears, the North American Pacific Northwest looks like a world war has been waged there.
It reaches Detroit. That's literally like as far as like from London to what European country can I think? European city can I think of? Like bloody Moscow maybe? Probably is like that far. Maybe not that far. Maybe a little less. But it is around that distance, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Cities have been turned to rubble and
from like Seattle to Detroit, same sort of distance.
But the pristine forests and pride of Cascadia have burned out of control for half a month. Untold millions of acres have been reduced to glowing embers, the damage shockingly visible from space and appearing like a massive gray scar on the North American continent. The final death toll is in the millions and will only climb as disease and starvation begins to take its toll on an entire region whose infrastructure has been completely devastated. To make matters worse, a resurgent winter begins its icy chill down on the area, and many survivors freeze to death for a lack of proper heating. The U.S. military pours its massive resources into humanitarian efforts in cities on both the American and Canadian side of the border, bolstered by a huge global response to this unprecedented disaster. Even countries normally at odds with the U.S. send aid. Chinese and Russian search and rescue personnel working along.
Like, what are these assumptions? I mean, I'd hope this would be the case, but how is this prediction or assumption like coming into his head? Again, I hope this would happen. This would maybe be a good way, a bad thing to sort of unite countries and stuff, but I don't know where he's getting this from.
Alongside U.S. and Canadian personnel. Much like in the Christmas tsunami of Southeast Asia and the Japanese 2011 tsunami, the world has been united by tragedy, but the affected area is simply too large, and there are too many victims and not enough aid. The earthquake's death toll will continue well into summer as starvation and disease plagues those who lived through the most destructive earthquake in world history. Now, go watch this while you're still alive.
God damn. Worst natural disasters in human history. Maybe I'll see that one next. But yeah, man, infographic show coming with the depressing videos. Someone should make a movie about this featuring Dwayne Johnson. He's getting ready for it already. I love these guys' sources. Most scientists, and very soon. I just disliked it. Most scientists, like who? The sources are in the description if you want to find where they obtain their information from. Oh, so the sources and stuff. I mean, still. probably is very unlikely, but at least they have sources, right? So if we get a 10 on the Richter scale, it's a GG moment. GG boys, it's been a fun ride. Japan had a major 7.1 earthquake, so please everybody pray for them. Oh, wait, what? Did this happen recently? Oh shit. My hometown of Boyce doesn't often get recognition, so it was nice for you to give us a shout out at 537. My apartment complex would collapse in Boyce if this happened, and I would definitely die. When you thought Valentine's Day couldn't get any more depressing, was this on Valentine's Day? I think it was. It's Valentine's Day the 13th or 14th. I think it is the 14th. What a day to release it. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know your sort of thoughts of this, how likely you think this would be. If it's just a stupid theory, that's never going to happen. But yeah, I enjoyed this video. So I mean, more infographics show on the way. Just suggest a video you want to see in future. But yeah, until next time, like, subscribe. Peace.